After my fiancé cheated on me with my sister, my family took their side. They invited them to Christmas and told me not to come. My mom sneered, "Don't be petty, they're in love." My sister smirked, "He chose the better woman." My dad said, "Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. My name is Meredith. It all started with what I can only describe as weird vibes. You know those weeks where you just feel like something's off, like a low hum of anxiety in the back of your mind, but you can't put your finger on what it is? That was me last November. My fiancé, Preston, the man I was going to spend the rest of my life with, suddenly became surgically attached to his phone. It wasn't the usual mindless scrolling through sports scores or news headlines. This was different. He was constantly checking for messages, his thumb hovering over the screen, and he'd angle it away from me, almost instinctively, whenever I walked into the room. "Everything okay?" I asked one evening, trying to sound casual as he quickly flipped his phone face down on the coffee table. "Yeah, fine," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Just a really busy group chat for work. This new project is a killer." And I let it go. I'm not the kind of woman who checks her partner's phone. I believed that trust was the foundation of everything. We'd been together for 3 solid years. We had a life together. We had a golden retriever named Gus who he adored as much as I did. We were planning a spring wedding. In my mind, our foundation was solid rock. So, I told myself it was just work stress. I didn't push. The catalyst for all of this, the person who came in and set a match to my life, was my little sister, Paige. She decided to move back to town just in time for the holidays. Now, to understand my family, you have to understand the dynamic between me and Paige. Paige has always been the sun that our family orbits around. She's bubbly and beautiful, with a cascade of blonde hair and a laugh that can charm anyone. My parents treat her like she's some kind of precious, golden creature. Everything she does is amazing. Oh, Paige is taking up pottery. Paige is thinking of backpacking through Europe. Paige just told the most hilarious story. And me? I'm Meredith. The reliable one. The older sister with the stable accounting job, the sensible car, and the 401k. I'm the one who remembers everyone's birthdays and schedules the vet appointments for Gus. I'm not glamorous. I'm just there. The bedrock. I don't hate my sister, not at all. But I've spent my entire life used to being the supporting actress in her movie. I'm the backup plan. The one who cleans up the confetti after her parade has passed. So, Paige came back to town, full of stories about her latest adventure, and everyone was thrilled. And suddenly, Preston was spending a lot of time helping her get settled. "I'm just helping Paige look at some furniture," he'd say. "She has such great taste." Or, "Paige wanted to check out that new art gallery downtown, and you know how much I love that stuff." At first, I honestly didn't think anything of it. My family has always been enmeshed, and Preston got along with her. It was nice, I told myself. It was good that he was making an effort. But then it became constant. It was every other day. They were going for coffee. They were going for jogs in the park. One afternoon, I called Preston, and he said he was just chilling at home. But clear as day, I could hear Paige's distinctive, high-pitched giggle in the background. "Who was that?" I asked, my stomach tightening. "Oh, that's just the TV, babe," he said quickly. "Watching a sitcom." I knew he was lying. I knew it in my gut. But I didn't say anything. What could I say? "Are you lying about being with my sister?" It sounded insane. It sounded paranoid and jealous. So I brushed it off. I told myself I was being the crazy, insecure girlfriend. I trusted him. I trusted her. Why would I possibly think anything else? The little things started adding up, like pebbles in my shoe, until walking became unbearable. The weird vibes weren't just vibes anymore, they were concrete moments of doubt. I started to feel like a detective in my own life, and I hated it. I planned a special date night for us, a reservation at the fancy Italian place downtown we'd been wanting to try for months. I bought a new dress. I was excited, thinking maybe a little romance was all we needed to get back on track. An hour before we were supposed to leave, my phone buzzed. It was a text from him. "So sorry, babe, can't make it tonight. Mom has an emergency, needs me to come over and help with a burst pipe or something. Rain check soon. Hugs and kisses." I was disappointed, but of course, I understood. Family emergencies happen. "No problem," I texted back. "Hope everything is okay." I took off the new dress, put on my sweats, and ordered a sad pizza for one. A few hours later, curled up on the sofa with Gus, I was mindlessly scrolling through Instagram. And then I saw it. A post from Paige. It was a picture of a fancy-looking cocktail, a delicate martini with a twist of lemon, held up in a toast. The bar was dimly lit and trendy. But it wasn't the drink that made my blood run cold. It was what was in the background. Draped over the back of the chair next to her was Preston's brown leather jacket. The one I'd bought him for Christmas last year. The one with the small, unique scuff mark on the left shoulder from when Gus had jumped on him as a puppy. There was no doubt. It was his. The air left my lungs in a rush. A burst pipe. He had lied, so easily, so carelessly. My thumb hovered over the screen, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I zoomed in, again and again, until the image dissolved into a blurry collection of pixels. It didn't change the truth. He was there. With her. While I was at home eating cold pizza, feeling sorry for him. I felt a hot flush of shame creep up my neck. I wasn't just sad, I was embarrassed. How could I have been so blind? I didn't confront him that night. What was the point? I knew he would just spin another lie. So I held it in, this ugly, heavy secret. The next morning, he was all apologies. "Hey, so sorry about last night. My mom's plumbing is a disaster." It was a whole ordeal. He kissed my forehead, and I had to fight every instinct to recoil. I just nodded, my coffee tasting like ash in my mouth. The distance between us became a chasm. We were living like polite roommates. The easy intimacy we once shared was gone, replaced by a tense, fragile courtesy. I felt like I was going crazy, seeing shadows and conspiracies everywhere. I tried to talk to him, to bridge the gap without making a direct accusation. "Hey," I said one evening, as he was, yet again, glued to his phone. "I feel like we haven't really connected lately. Is everything okay with us?" He finally looked up, a flicker of something, annoyance? Guilt, in his eyes before it was gone. "Of course, Mare. Everything's fine. I've just been swamped. This work project, and helping Paige out, it's been a lot." He reached over and squeezed my hand. "We're solid. You know that." But his touch felt hollow. His words felt rehearsed. I wanted to believe him so badly that I almost did. I almost let myself sink back into the comfortable denial. After all, my family acted like everything was perfect. My mom would call and gush about how wonderful it was that Preston was being so supportive of Paige. "He's like the brother she never had," she chirped. My dad would ask when Preston was coming over for Sunday dinner. They were all playing their parts in this happy family facade. They had no idea the stage was about to collapse. Or maybe they did. Maybe they were the ones who built it that way in the first place. And then, the real fun began. My family has this big group chat, like most people do. It's usually a chaotic mix of my dad's terrible jokes, my aunt's updates on her prize-winning roses, and my mom trying to coordinate everyone's schedules. This year, she was deep in planning our annual Christmas Eve party. I'm not huge on the holidays, but I always show up. I never miss it. It's always hosted at my parents' house, a tradition set in stone. This time, though, something was different. I was at my desk at work, trying to focus on an end-of-year financial report, when I got a notification. It was a text message directly from my mom, not in the group chat. That was the first red flag. The message read, "Meredith, honey. I think it would be best if you skipped Christmas this year. It would just be too awkward with everything that's happened." I stared at the words, my brain refusing to process them. I read it again. And a third time. Everything that's happened? What on earth had happened? My heart started to hammer against my ribs. I immediately switched over to the family group chat, frantically scrolling back, convinced I must have missed some major announcement. And I had. Buried between a picture of my cousin's new baby and a debate about whether to serve ham or turkey were a series of messages that I clearly wasn't meant to be the focus of. My dad had written, "We just need everyone to be mature about this." Paige had replied with a simple heart emoji. My aunt had chimed in with, "Love wins." Mature about what? What love? My hands were shaking as I texted Preston. My mom just uninvited me to Christmas. What the hell is going on? The three little dots appeared, danced for an eternity, then vanished. Then they reappeared. Finally, a single, devastating reply popped up. "I'm sorry. This is for the best." Sorry? Best for who? A cold, white-hot rage washed over me, eclipsing the confusion. I was done with texts. I was done with being kept in the dark. I picked up my phone and called my mother. She answered on the second ring, her voice sickeningly cheerful. "Hello, dear." "Mom," I said, and my own voice sounded foreign and sharp in my ears. "What the hell is going on?" The fake cheer evaporated instantly. Her voice turned to ice. "Meredith, do not be petty." Petty? I let out a bark of laughter that was half a sob. "What are you talking about?" There was a pause. And then she dropped the bomb that blew my entire world apart. They're in love. Preston and Paige. They are together, and it's serious. You need to accept it and move on. The room started to spin. I grabbed the edge of my desk to steady myself. Are you kidding me?" I whispered. "Is this some kind of sick joke?" "No," she said, her voice hard as steel. "And you should try to be happy for your sister." Happy for her? I couldn't breathe. It felt like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed my heart into a pulp. Then I heard a rustling sound, and another voice came on the line. Paige's voice. Sugary sweet and laced with poison. "Just get over it, Meredith," she cooed. "He chose the better woman. You should just take the L." I slammed the phone down. I couldn't listen to another second. I stared at my computer screen, the numbers on the spreadsheet blurring into nonsense. My phone pinged again. A direct message from my dad. "You were never good enough for him anyway. Stop acting like a victim." That was it. That was the moment something inside me broke. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't even anger anymore. It was a terrifying, profound nothingness. It was like a switch had been flipped, plunging my entire emotional world into darkness. They hadn't just chosen her over me. They had erased me. They had decided my feelings, my life, my broken heart, were an inconvenience to their happy new narrative. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I stood up from my desk, told my boss I had a family emergency, and walked out. I drove to my apartment, our apartment, and started packing. Luckily, most of my personal things were still in boxes, stacked in the corner of the bedroom, waiting for the move we were supposed to make into a new house together after the holidays. The irony was suffocating. I packed the pieces of the future I thought I had, each sweater, each book, a testament to my own stupidity. I worked with a mechanical, numb efficiency. I loaded everything into my car, my little SUV now crammed to the ceiling with the wreckage of my life. Gus watched me from the doorway, his head tilted, his sad brown eyes seeming to understand that everything had changed. I knelt down and hugged him tight, burying my face in his soft fur. "It's going to be okay, buddy," I whispered, though I wasn't sure if I was trying to convince him or myself. I took off my engagement ring and left it sitting on the kitchen counter, right next to one of Preston's stupid little notes. I drove to my friend Sarah's place. Not my closest friend, but a kind soul who had a spare room and a policy of not asking too many questions. I sat in my car outside her building for what felt like an hour, just staring at the messages on my phone. My entire family, deciding my life without me. I didn't answer a single one of them. I didn't call anyone back. I just opened the family group chat one last time and typed a single message. "Thanks for showing me exactly who you all are. Makes it so damn easy to cut every one of you off." Then I hit send. I left the group. I deleted the chat. I blocked Paige. I blocked my mom and my dad. I blocked Preston. I methodically wiped them from my digital life. And then, finally, I let myself feel something. It wasn't grief. It was a pure, cold, clarifying rage. I would not let them treat me like this. Not this time. The first few days were a blur of numb disbelief. I was living in Sarah's spare bedroom, a small, quiet space that smelled faintly of lavender and dust. I was surrounded by my own boxes, a physical manifestation of a life that had been abruptly put on hold. Gus would lie at the foot of the bed, his warm presence a small comfort in the overwhelming chaos, but mostly I just lay there, staring at the unfamiliar patterns on the ceiling. I kept waiting. Waiting for a text, a call, anything to say this was all a monstrous misunderstanding, a sick joke. But the only thing that came was silence. Well, not total silence. It was the kind of silence where you know people are talking about you, just not to you. I hadn't blocked my cousin, Helen, yet, and I made the mistake of opening Facebook. And there it was. A photo posted by my mom. Paige and Preston, sitting side by side at my family's Christmas Eve dinner table, smiling for the camera. Preston had his arm slung casually around Paige's shoulders. My mother stood in the background, beaming like she had just won the lottery. The caption read, "So happy for these two." Truly. Truly. That one word felt like a twisting knife. My stomach churned. I wasn't just replaced. I had been happily, publicly, erased and rewritten. I blocked Helen immediately, and my mother too, but the damage was done. The image was seared into my brain. Living out of boxes in someone else's house is as miserable as it sounds. Sarah was an angel. She didn't press for details. She'd leave a cup of tea outside my door in the morning and text me in the evening, "Hey, ordered pizza if you're hungry." I was more grateful for her quiet kindness than she could ever know. Most of our mutual friends were awkwardly silent. I got a couple of half-hearted texts along the lines of, "Hey girl, so sorry to hear what happened," but no one really wanted to get involved. People don't know what to say. I don't blame them. After about a week of existing in that foggy, grief-stricken state, something inside me began to shift. The numbness started to recede, and in its place, a hard, sharp anger began to crystallize. I started thinking about how quickly, how easily, my family had discarded me. The issue wasn't even about Preston anymore. It was about the fact that my own parents, the two people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, were not only willing but eager to throw me aside for their favored child. And I realized, with a sickening clarity, that this wasn't new. It was just the most extreme version of a pattern that had defined my entire life. I was always the reliable one. When my mom's car broke down, who spent a whole Saturday at the mechanic's? Meredith. When my dad needed help with his taxes, who sat with him for hours, poring over receipts? Meredith. When Paige's student loan needed a cosigner because her credit was shot, who put their own financial standing on the line without a second thought? Meredith. I was the fixer, the problem solver, the family's safety net. My reward was being taken for granted. Paige, on the other hand, had floated through life on a cloud of praise and financial bailouts. My parents paid the security deposit on her apartment. They covered her car insurance. My mom once even said to me, "It's just that you're more responsible, Meredith." She said it as if it were a compliment, but it was a curse. It meant I was expected to handle my own life, while Paige was expected to be handled. And that cold, hard anger gave me a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in years. I had spent my life letting them treat me like a backup plan, a placeholder until something better came along. I was done. Utterly, completely done. I sat up in bed, feeling a sense of purpose for the first time in days. Gus lifted his head, his tail giving a tentative thump against the mattress. "All right, buddy," I said, and my voice sounded stronger. "Time to get to work." I opened my laptop. My mind was sharp and focused. I wasn't thinking about petty revenge, like keying their cars or posting angry rants online. I was thinking about hitting them where it would actually hurt. Their money. Their comfort. Their carefully constructed image. I started with the easy target, Preston. He still owed me money. A significant amount. We'd put down a non-refundable deposit on our wedding venue. We'd bought a brand new sofa together for the house we were going to move into, with the verbal agreement that he'd pay me back for his half. "I'll Venmo you next week," he'd said. That next week never came. I combed through my Venmo history, my bank statements, old text messages. I created a meticulously detailed spreadsheet, documenting every single dollar, every single cent. Then, I moved on to the bigger issue. The Paige issue. The apartment my parents had set her up in? It wasn't just an apartment. It was a small house they owned, a rental property just a few blocks from their own home. And a few years ago, they'd asked me if I would co-sign some paperwork to refinance it. Paige's credit was terrible, and they needed someone with a steady income and a good credit score on the application. I, being the good, reliable daughter, had said yes. Which meant my name was still on the deed. Paige had been living there, rent-free, ever since. I'd never seen a dime from it, which was fine at the time. But now, it made my blood boil. The more I dug, the more I realized how much I had let slide, how much I had enabled their behavior by being so accommodating. My parents had made a critical miscalculation. They assumed I would never rock the boat. They were about to find out how wrong they were. I wasn't going to just disappear and let them pretend I never existed. I was going to make them deal with the consequences of their actions. I wasn't going to do anything illegal. I was going to do something much worse. I was going to hold them to the letter of the law. I was going to enforce the very agreements they had relied on me to uphold. I started drafting an email. An email to my parents. It was simple, professional, and to the point. Subject: property at 123 Maple Street. Dear Mom and Dad, it began. This email serves as my official notification that I am exercising my right to dissolve our co-ownership of the aforementioned property. As per our legal agreement, you have 30 days to buy out my equity share. I hadn't sent it yet. Not quite. I wanted to time it perfectly. But my finger hovered over the send button. And for the first time in weeks, I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had just realized they were holding all the cards. The planning became my lifeline. It gave me a purpose, something to focus on other than the hollow ache in my chest. I spent days methodically organizing my documents, creating a neat PDF file of Preston's debts, complete with screenshots of his texts promising to pay me back. It felt small, but it also felt like I was reclaiming a tiny piece of my power. I decided to start with Preston. It was less emotionally complicated. I sent him a brief, professional email. Subject: unpaid debts. I attached the PDF and wrote, "Preston, attached is a detailed breakdown of the money you owe me. The total comes to $2,450. I expect this to be paid in full by the end of the month. Meredith." He read it almost immediately. I could see the read receipt. And then, for hours, nothing. Just silence. Finally, a reply popped up. A single sentence. "Are you really going to be this petty?" Rage, hot and acidic, rose in my throat. Petty? He and my sister had destroyed my life, and he had the audacity to call me petty for asking for my own money back? I typed out a furious response, my fingers flying across the keyboard. But then I stopped. I deleted it. No. I wouldn't let him drag me down into a screaming match. I would stay in control. I simply reattached the PDF and wrote back, "This isn't petty. This is business." With that done, I turned my attention to my family. The email about the rental house sat in my drafts folder, a ticking time bomb. But before I lit the fuse, I needed to be sure of my legal standing. I didn't want to be countersued for some foolish mistake. I called Sarah. "Hey," I said, "do you know anyone who's good with real estate law? Not like a full-blown lawyer, just someone I can ask a few general questions." "Absolutely," she said without hesitation. "My cousin Mark is a paralegal at a real estate firm. He's brilliant. Let me ask if he'd mind chatting with you." Mark agreed. We spoke on the phone that evening. I explained the situation clinically, leaving out the dramatic family backstory. I simply stated that I was a co-owner of a property and wished to divest myself of it. "Well," he said after I finished, his voice calm and reassuring, "since your name is on the deed, you absolutely have the right to force a sale. It's called a partition action. Essentially, if the other co-owners can't or won't buy you out, a court can order the property to be sold and the proceeds divided. It's not always a fast process, but the threat of it is usually enough to get things moving." That was all I needed to hear. "Thank you, Mark," I said, a wave of confidence washing over me. "You've been a huge help." That night, I opened the email to my parents. I read it over one last time, making sure it was cold, professional, and devoid of emotion. Then I took a deep, steadying breath and clicked send. The feeling was surreal. There was no thunderclap. The world didn't stop turning. It was just a quiet click, sending a digital hand grenade into the heart of my family. I shut my laptop and tried to watch a movie with Sarah. But my focus was shot. I kept glancing at my phone, waiting. The wait wasn't long. Less than an hour later, my phone began to buzz. It was my dad. I stared at his name flashing on the screen, and my heart began to pound. I let it go to voicemail. A moment later, a text message. "My mom. Meredith, call me immediately. Your father and I need to talk to you about this ridiculous email." Ridiculous. That word lit a fire in me. I didn't reply. Then a text from Paige. "OMG, Mare, what are you doing? Are you trying to ruin everything?" I ignored her. Then my dad called again. And again. Finally, I knew I had to face the music. I couldn't hide forever. I answered the phone, bracing myself. "What in the hell is this, Meredith?" he roared, foregoing any greeting. "What are you trying to do, bankrupt us?" "No," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "I'm just taking back what's mine. I want out of that house." My name will no longer be attached to it. Your sister lives there, he yelled. She has nowhere else to go. You know she can't afford a place on her own. Then maybe she should get a real job, I said, the ice in my own voice surprising me. And you have 30 days to figure it out. Buy me out, or we list it. Your choice. He launched into a tirade about gratitude, about family, about how I'd become bitter and cruel. I didn't argue. I just let him vent. When he finally ran out of steam, I said quietly, I'm done with this conversation, Dad, and I hung up. My hand was trembling, but I felt a strange, almost giddy sense of exhilaration. For the first time in my entire life, I hadn't backed down. I hadn't apologized. I hadn't tried to smooth things over. I had drawn a line in the sand. And it felt good. It felt like power. The war had officially begun. My phone became a battlefield, under constant siege from guilt-laced texts, angry voicemails, and phony pleas for reconciliation. My parents tried every tactic in the book. First came the rage. My mom left me a 3-minute-long voicemail in which she called me selfish, ungrateful, and accused me of tearing the family apart. After everything we've done for you, she shrieked at the end, her voice cracking with fury. I listened to it once, then deleted it. When rage didn't work, they pivoted to guilt. My dad started sending me old photos from my childhood, vacations to Disney World, birthday parties, my high school graduation. Remember the good times, Meredith, he texted. Don't let bitterness ruin this. I didn't reply. It only made me angrier. The good times? They felt like a lie now, a carefully curated album that ignored the truth of our family's dynamics. Then Paige started in. She tried the concerned best friend approach. Hey Mare, I know you're hurting. I am too. This all happened so fast. But you can't do this to us. We're sisters. Sisters. The word made me want to laugh. I actually replied to that one. You stopped being my sister the day you slept with my fiancé and let our family throw me to the curb. She didn't text back after that. The fallout started to ripple outward, beyond my immediate family. My cousin Helen, my mom's unofficial mouthpiece, called. Meredith, she began, her voice dripping with self-righteousness, everyone is talking about how you're behaving. You're making things so awkward for everyone. How is me claiming what is legally mine making it awkward for them? I asked, genuinely curious about her logic. It's just not how things are done. Family is supposed to stick together. That same family decided I wasn't worth sticking with, I said. I'm just finishing the job. She hung up on me. The most dramatic event happened about a week into this siege. I was at Sarah's apartment, trying to have a normal evening. We'd ordered Thai food and were watching a cheesy romantic comedy. Suddenly, there was a loud banging on the door. Not a knock. A fist pounding on the wood. Gus shot up, barking furiously. Sarah and I exchanged wide-eyed glances. Are you expecting anyone? She whispered. I shook my head. The pounding came again, louder this time. Meredith! I know you're in there. Open the door. It was Paige. A cold dread washed over me. How did she know I was here? Sarah got up. Stay put, she said, her voice firm. I'll handle this. She went to the door and opened it a crack. Paige was standing there, her face flushed, her eyes wild. I need to talk to my sister. Now is not a good time, Paige, Sarah said calmly. But Paige wasn't listening. She shoved the door open, sending Sarah stumbling back, and stormed into the apartment. Her eyes found me on the sofa. What the hell do you think you're doing? She shrieked. Who do you think you are, trying to kick me out of my house? I stood up, my heart hammering against my ribs. It's my house, too, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. And I want out. You are not going to ruin my life over this, she screamed, taking a step toward me. It looks like you did that all on your own, I shot back, holding my ground. She lunged at me, and for a split second, I thought she was going to hit me, but Sarah moved between us. That's enough, Sarah said, her voice sharp as glass. Paige, you need to leave. Right now. Paige glared at both of us, her breath coming in ragged gasps. You are going to regret this, Meredith, she hissed. Then she spun around and stormed out of the apartment, slamming the door so hard a picture frame rattled on the wall. The room was silent except for my own ragged breathing and Gus's low whimpers. Sarah turned to me, her face pale. Are you okay? I nodded, though I was shaking from head to toe. I'm fine. Less than 5 minutes later, my phone pinged. A text from my mom. Paige told me what happened. You're out of control. I can't believe you would treat your sister that way. I laughed. A dry, humorless sound. They had already twisted the story, painting me as the aggressor. It was incredible. If she ever shows up here again, I texted back, I'm calling the cops. Don't you dare threaten your family, she replied. Then tell her to stay away from me. That night, I didn't sleep. I just sat in the dark, listening to the quiet rhythm of Sarah's breathing from the other room, and I knew, with absolute certainty, that there was no turning back. This fight was going all the way to the end. And I was not going to be the one to lose. After the confrontation with Paige, my family changed tactics. They realized aggression wasn't working, so they circled back to guilt and manipulation, but now with a new, desperate edge. The calls became a near-nightly ritual. Sometimes it was my dad, trying to reason with me. Other times, it was my mom, weeping. You don't understand what you're doing, my dad said one evening, his voice heavy with exhaustion. This is bigger than you. This is about our finances, our retirement plans. You should have thought about that before you decided to sacrifice me for Paige, I replied, my voice a flat line. You're tearing this family apart, my mom sobbed during another call. You did that when you chose sides, I said, my heart a cold, hard stone in my chest. I'm just cleaning up the mess. They didn't get it. They truly didn't. In their minds, I was punishing them. They couldn't see that I was simply no longer allowing them to use me. My reliability had been a resource they'd tapped for years, and now that the well was dry, they were panicking. Meanwhile, I kept pushing forward. Preston finally paid me. Not all at once, of course. He sent the money in 2 separate payments, and after the second one cleared, he blocked me. I saw an Instagram story of his a week later, reshared by a mutual friend. It was some cheesy quote about learning who your real friends are. I laughed out loud. The lack of self-awareness was truly breathtaking. The property issue dragged on. My parents tried to stall. They tried to get me to attend a family meeting to talk things through. I refused. There is nothing to discuss, I texted back. The terms are clear. Buy me out, or it goes on the market. Finally, they did something I never anticipated. They hired a lawyer. I received a call from a man with a smooth, oily voice who introduced himself as my family's legal counsel. He tried to persuade me to reconsider for the sake of family harmony. This isn't personal, I told him, repeating the words I'd said to Preston. This is business. My parents have their options. That call must have cost them a pretty penny, because my dad called me immediately after, absolutely incandescent with rage. He screamed at me, called me ungrateful, said he wished he'd never put my name on that deed in the first place. Now you know how it feels to be left out, I said quietly, and hung up. People started to pick sides publicly. Family friends who used to always invite me to their barbecues stopped calling. My aunt, my mother's sister, sent me a message. I hope you're happy with yourself. I blocked her. but a couple of my cousins reached out. "Hey Meredith," one wrote, "we're here if you want to talk. That whole situation is messed up." It wasn't much, but it meant something. My circle was shrinking, but it was becoming more real. After a month of their delays and threats, my parents finally caved. They couldn't afford to buy me out. They were too financially stretched from years of bailing Paige out of her latest messes. So, the house went up for sale. The day the realtor hammered the for sale sign into the front lawn, my mom sent me a text. "I hope this was worth it." I didn't reply. That night, Sarah and I ordered takeout and watched bad movies. She didn't ask about the sign, the calls, any of it. We just sat together, laughing at stupid jokes and sharing a pint of ice cream. In that comfortable silence, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in months. I hadn't won. The war wasn't over. But I had survived the battle. I had held my ground, and I was still standing. If you're still listening, could you do me a huge favor and like this video, and comment with the number 1 down below? That way, I'll know you've given me a thumbs up, and I'll know you're right here with me on this journey. Your support means the world to me and gives me the strength to keep going. So please, comment with the number 1, and let's get back to the story. The sale of the house was surprisingly quick. The market was hot, and it was a cute little place. It sold in 3 weeks. The closing was a sterile, emotionless affair conducted through lawyers. I never saw my parents. I just received a wire transfer for my share of the proceeds. Seeing that number appear in my bank account didn't feel like a victory. It just felt final. It was the financial punctuation mark at the end of a long, painful sentence. The consequences of that sale began to ripple through my former family almost immediately. The first domino to fall was Paige. She had 30 days to vacate the property. I heard through the grapevine, a mutual friend who still spoke to me, that she had a complete meltdown. She had expected my parents to swoop in and save her, to magically produce the money to buy me out or find her an even better place to live. But for the first time, the bank of Mom and Dad was closed. The sale had strained their finances, and they simply didn't have the resources to set her up in a new place that met her standards. The next domino was her relationship with Preston. Apparently, living together in a state of crisis wasn't the romantic dream they had imagined. The mutual friend told me they were fighting constantly. Paige blamed him for not having enough money to help. He blamed her for being entitled and helpless. The charm that had worked so well on my parents and on him began to wear thin when faced with the harsh reality of packing boxes and looking at apartment listings. They broke up less than a month after the house sold. She moved back in with my parents. He, I heard, was crashing on a friend's couch. My family imploded. The carefully constructed image of the perfect, happy family had been shattered, and they didn't know how to function in the wreckage. My parents were fighting all the time. My dad was stressed about their retirement fund, which had taken a significant hit. My mom was miserable having a sullen, unemployed 30-year-old daughter living back in her childhood bedroom. The sun of their solar system had turned into a black hole, and it was sucking all the light out of their house. And that's when they turned their attention back to me. After a few weeks of stony silence following the closing, the calls started again. But this time, the tone was different. The anger was gone, replaced by a desperate, wheedling tone that turned my stomach. It started with my dad. Short, simple texts. "Got a minute, or call me?" I ignored them. Then my mom followed up with a long, rambling message about how family comes first and how I was being stubborn and holding a grudge. I sent her a one-word reply. No. Then things really kicked into high gear. I got a frantic call from my cousin Helen. She was talking so fast I could barely understand her. She said she was worried about my grandma, that my parents were fighting all the time, that Paige had moved back in and things were really bad. "That's not my circus," I said calmly. "Aren't you even a little bit sorry?" she asked, her voice incredulous. "Not even a little," I said, and hung up. Right after that, Paige tried calling. I ignored it. So she sent me a wall of text, a novel of self-pity and blame. Are you happy now? You've ruined everything. I hope it was worth it. I didn't reply. She called again. I picked up, just to hear what she'd say. She just started yelling, so I hung up. She called back and left a voicemail that was just 30 seconds of heavy, angry breathing. Real mature. Then came the message that was almost comical in its absurdity. My mom sent a group text to just me, her, and my dad. It was the kind of message you can tell was written through tears. It said, "Please, you're all we have left. It's not the same without you." She wanted to have a family meeting. I didn't reply. My dad tried again. Your sister made mistakes, but you're being dramatic. We can fix this. I sent back, there's nothing to fix. You made your choices. My Aunt Sarah called me, the one who'd told me she hoped I was happy with myself. You need to stop this, she said, her voice sharp. Your parents are exhausted. Paige is a mess. People are starting to ask questions. Maybe they should have thought about that before, I said. You're punishing everyone for something that wasn't even about you, she snapped. And that's when it all clicked into place for me. I started to laugh. It was always about me, I said. You all just didn't care until it started costing you money. And I hung up the phone. The final act of their desperation was both sad and infuriating. My dad showed up at Sarah's apartment building one night. He didn't come to the door. He just stood on the sidewalk across the street and called my name. Sarah texted me from her room. Dude, your dad is outside. Do I call someone? I looked out the window and saw him standing there under a streetlight, a pathetic, lonely figure. A year ago, that sight would have broken my heart. I would have run down and thrown my arms around him. But now, I felt nothing. Just a profound sense of weariness. I ignored him. He eventually gave up and left. They started sending emails, too. Long, rambling essays about how family means forgiveness. How they only ever wanted what was best for me. How they hoped I could find it in my heart to move on and come home. I just hit archive on every single one. At that point, it felt like they weren't even trying to reach me anymore. It was like they were performing for each other, trying to prove who was making the bigger effort to fix the family they had broken. I knew their pattern. If they could just get me back in the house, things could go back to business as usual. Paige on her pedestal, and me, cleaning up the mess. It was never going to happen. The money from the property sale hit my account about 2 weeks after the closing. The first thing I did was pay off a few big bills. The second thing I did was find a new place to live. A small, one-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. It wasn't fancy, but it was all mine. I didn't give them the address. I kept my circle tiny. Sarah, a couple of other trusted friends, and no one from the family. What's wild is how much quieter my life became. The constant hum of anxiety I had lived with for years was just gone. I hadn't even realized it was there until it disappeared. I still get random messages. One time my dad tried to guilt-trip me by texting, "If something happens to your mother, it's on you." I just replied, "Don't." He didn't answer. My mom tried to play nice again recently. "We just want to talk." I wrote back, "You did enough talking before." I could go on about the little things. How I saw Paige at the grocery store and she quickly looked away, her face pale. How my mom tried to corner me at the gas station and I just got in my car and drove off. How my dad sent me a long, rambling text about how men need to stand together, which made absolutely no sense. But honestly, it's all just noise now. I guess my family always treated me like the spare part. They only missed me when the machine broke down and they needed me to fix it. Paige did what she did because she spent her whole life being told she can have whatever she wants. And my parents played along because she was the one they wanted to see win. I had to be the one to end the game, because they never would have. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I feel amazing, or that I learned some huge life lesson. I just did what I had to do. I'm still angry, yes. But I'm not sorry. If you're reading this and you're wondering if you should just let people walk all over you because they're family, I hope this makes the answer pretty clear. I don't know what comes next, and for the first time in a long time, I honestly don't care. It's my life to figure out now. They can call, they can text, they can email all they want. I'm not picking up. They wanted a winner. Now they can deal with what that actually looks like. That's it. No sappy ending. I'm just done. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've been through something similar, or if any part of this resonated with you, please share your thoughts in the comments. It helps to know you're not alone. And if you could, please like this video and subscribe. It really does help. Thanks again.